Cool. So that's
Yeah. Once again, we.
that's number one on our top scorer is Michael Jordan. For mine too. Actually, for me, okay. So if you can't decide, I'll just list mine. Okay.
Sure.
Michael Jordan, number one, and I actually wanted to get your opinion on this topic because we talked about before. Wilt Chamberlain.
Yeah.
And this is interesting. We talked about Wilt Chamberlain versus Kareem. Who do you think was actually the better scorer out of the two?
I'd take Kareem.
Kareem.
Yes.
Interesting.
And it's not by the numbers.
Because the consensus was that Will at his peak was better.
Exactly, because he averaged 50 points in a season. He had a 100-point game.
Yeah.
The 100-point game, sure, 100 points is 100 points.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his teammates wanted him to get that 100 points.
Mm-hmm.
They were already blowing out the other team. The game was over.
Yeah.
There's a lot of players where there's a lot of great players in the regular season where they're playing so well that they're up 20, 30 points in a game and they're done after the third quarter. Mm-hmm. So they set up the fourth quarter. And if they kept hitting the fourth quarter, and if your teammates kept feeding them the ball, they would have had a really high scoring game too.
Mm-hmm.
But that Wilt game, they already blew out the other team. But then at the end, he still played the whole game to try to get that 100 points. And his teammates at the end, even though they're blowing the other team out, were still calling timeouts to try to get an extra possession so they can get Wilt the ball again. Because they're really trying to help Wilt get the 100 points. So I wouldn't look too much into that 100-point game. I mean, it's still an accomplishment, of course, but I wouldn't use that as a factor.
The context, okay. 62.
Yeah.
Interesting year because so many people averaged like their career high. So Wilt, 50 points a game.
Right.
Elgin Baylor, 38 points a game. Oscar Robertson, triple-double the entire season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So very interesting season. And Wilt actually played over 48 minutes a game that season, right? And just the competition level was different, right? So Kareem's best season, I think, was like 35 points a game, 72, right? Mm-hmm. So would you consider Kareem's 72 season better than Wilt's 62 season? Right.
I would consider Kareem's best season better than any of Wilt's best seasons.
Wow.
The reason is because, in my opinion, Kareem is the better player, in my opinion.
Because you think he's more skilled, right?
Not only is he more skilled, offensively, Kareem is definitely way more skilled. But Kareem also has proven that his offense was skilled enough and dominant enough that he can be the primary focal point of an offense where you can actually run your offense through Kareem and actually win a championship. Mm-hmm. Whereas Wilt, on the other hand, Wilt had those 50-point seasons, but throughout the playoffs, I've always seen him have trouble in the playoffs because Wilt doesn't have the same type of fundamentals as Kareem did. You can't completely run your offense through Wilt and actually run a championship level offense through Wilt. Wilt's more of a guy, he's kind of like your Dwight Howard, where he's so freakishly athletic and so big, especially back then versus the competition. Yeah. But he needs his teammates to actually feed him the ball at certain spots. Mm. But he's not a guy where it's like, okay, my team doesn't have anything, so I'm just going to post up. And then, because he doesn't have that footwork sometimes. Yeah. Wilt, instead, when he posts up, he actually he likes to take that little turnaround, little bunny jump shot. But the problem with that is it goes in sometimes, but it's pretty hit and miss. And it's not something that you can win a championship.
He should be considered one of the first with like a kind of fadeaway thing. He's also and the finger roll as well. He kind of like
he has
proto versions of it.
The little finger roll dip shot, where and that's something that he has is pretty unique. Where he can actually catch the ball about 3-4 feet away from the basket, but he's got the nice little touch around the basket, which is drop the ball in. Mm-hmm. But the problem is his offense isn't polished enough to actually be able to anchor a championship offense. Where you just run the play through him and then through the post. He doesn't have the footwork to actually get high percentage shots off enough to actually make him a big threat for you to win a championship. That's what I see from Wilt's game. That was a problem. For example, we're talking about that one that he has in the post where he does that little turnaround bunny jump shot. Yeah. First of all, it's hit and miss. Secondly, what I don't like about that shot is if he misses it, then it takes him out of the play completely. Because once you take that fadeaway and he misses that shot, there's no one else to rebound. Mm-hmm. And he's not in offensive rebounding position, which is something that I don't like. For example, when Kareem is a guy that you literally you can actually run the offense through him, and your offense is good enough to win a championship. That's the big difference between these two guys. So that's why I won't look so much at the 50-point seasons. I would actually look more, is his offense dominant enough and skilled enough where you can actually run a championship level offense through him? And Kareem definitely has that. I don't think Wilt has that.
I think the one reason maybe like Kareem So Wilt, when he went to college, he went to University of Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't actually get to play under Fog Allen, who was one of the best coaches who actually played under James Naismith, the inventor of basketball. He didn't actually get to play under him. So, he's I think he went to the NCAA finals, whatever, and he didn't win. He lost. So it's kind of like a recurring thing for Wilt's career. Kareem, on the other hand, he played under John Wooden, who's actually one of the best coaches ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he taught him a lot of good fundamentals and stuff. Also, another good thing that's kind of a good thing for Kareem that kind of just happened to him is the NCAA outlaw dunking.
The no dunking rule.
Outlaw dunking,
exactly.
But it forced him to develop more skills
exactly.
away from the basket. So he developed the skyhook, right? Everything else, so that actually helped Kareem. It didn't actually hurt him.
Exactly.
Right.
So it made him a better player. And when you watch Kareem play, it's not even just the skyhook. A lot of people who actually never really watch Kareem's actual full games, and they only watch highlights, all they know is the skyhook. And yes, the skyhook was his biggest weapon.
Yeah.
But the guy's footwork was very good. I mean, his footwork for a big man was amazing. He has up and unders. He had drop steps.
Yep.
He was one of the first big men that was both big and imposing, but also had the skill, the footwork, and the fundamentals, and the touch, both together. Whereas traditionally, a lot of times, the big men back then, or even most of the big men, if they're big and imposing, they didn't have the fundamentals. Like Wilt. Wilt was big and imposing, but he didn't have the footwork or the actual fundamentals. But he was so big and imposing that he would give you huge scoring games in the regular season most of the time.
Yeah.
But because of that lack of fundamentals, he often comes up short in the playoffs, and that's the big.
It's interesting. There's like an 8-point difference between his regular season playoffs.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly, and you can tell if you actually play basketball, and if you're not playing the post, and if you watch him play, you can tell he's missing those fundamentals, and you can tell that's a big problem because he's not a guy that can just post up and catch the ball and then work the offense through him, and he's taking us to the championship round. That's not what he has, and that's pretty unfortunate. He's definitely one of the great scorers for sure, but that's one glaring problem that I see in his game. For example, let's not even go with Kareem. Like if you see even the guy like Shaq that we were talking about before. Defensively, Wilt is a better defender overall than Shaq. Wilt also is in better conditioning most of the time.
Is Wilt a better defender than Kareem?
I would say overall maybe by a little bit, but people forgot that Milwaukee Bucks Kareem is actually a very good rebounder and defender as well.
Yeah, in his prime.
Exactly.
Was,
Like you can look at the numbers and say that Wilt got more rebounds than Kareem, but it comes to what I was talking about. When Kareem was the focal point of the offense, he was the guy that was actually in the post taking the hook shots. He wasn't in rebounding positions as much as Wilt was, because Wilt, when he was on the Lakers, he had a lot more other scorers around him. His primary focus wasn't as a star scorer anymore. So because of that, he can be like a Dennis Rodman and camp in the paint all the time to get a lot of rebounds. Whereas Kareem had to do both. So of course his rebounding numbers would be just a touch lower, but they're still very good. I mean, now is Wilt a better defender than Kareem? I would say maybe a little bit. I mean, he had more energy, I would say. Higher motor, a little bit more athletic, more energy. But at the same time, like the glaring gap between the two of them is the skill and the offense that Kareem has. And that's why, as an overall player, I would take Kareem over.
So Kareem over Wilt. You would also take Hakeem over Wilt, is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
For the skill level as well.
Yeah, definitely. Because Hakeem, I think, is pretty much just as good as Kareem. When I watch these guys play, these two big men, like I would have a tough time choosing between Kareem and Hakeem. Yeah, because they're both just amazing. And Hakeem is kind of a freak of nature too, because he's quick, he's athletic, super skilled, great footwork, great touch. Dominant on both ends, but he's a big man that can also play like a guard sometimes because he played soccer back in the day, so he had really good footwork.
Yep.
So if you actually watch when Hakeem played on defense, he's one of the few dominant centers who he's dominant on the inside as well. But if the other team plays a pick and roll to try to get a mismatch, Hakeem's one of the few big men that after the pick and roll, he's actually quick enough to actually guard the opposing team's guards for like a good 3 to 5 seconds and still not give up anything. And then still afterwards be able to rotate back on his own guy.
Right.
There's not too many centers in the history of the league that's able to do that. AD's one guy that can do that a little bit. Not quite at the level of Hakeem, but AD has a bit of that ability. But Hakeem is able to actually guard both inside and outside. So even on a pick and roll, you're not really getting much of a mismatch when the other team has Hakeem on defense. And offensively, obviously, we both know the guy's super skilled in the post, great footwork. I think
Kareem had a little bit higher offensive peak than Hakeem, but Hakeem was probably slightly better defender.
I think so. think so. And so if I was a GM, I would have a tough time choosing between these two as my best.
Wilt versus Shaq. So we talked about this.
That's the interesting part.
Yeah.
Wilt is a better defender than Shaq.
Yeah.
He's a bit more athletic than Shaq.
Mm-hmm.
But Shaq, if you take away the numbers that Wilt had,
yeah.
like we have to because Wilt played in an era when there was a lot more possessions.
Mm-hmm.
By about 33% more possessions. You factor that is 50-20 seasons where you got 50 points, 20 rebounds.
Yeah.
You take off 33% of that, that's around 33, 34 points a game and about maybe 13 rebounds a game. Still great, still league leading.
Yeah.
But that instantly puts him in the realm of reality now compared to some of the other modern stars now. Like Shaq and everything, we're putting those numbers. Now, so let's not talk about the numbers. Now let's just break down their games when you watch them play. Is one's a better defender, but Shaq, in my opinion, is a more polished post offensive player by quite a bit. Shaq has proven, obviously, that he's a guy that you can run the offense through in the post. He can create offense in the post, and you can win a championship with a guy. But Wilt hasn't proven that, for the most part. But Shaq has, with two different teams, and to win 4 championships. When you see Shaq play in the post, he can take contact better than I think Wilt does. Because I noticed with Wilt, for a guy that's so big and athletic, when I watch him play, he tends to shy away from contact too much.
He's afraid of getting fouled out.
Afraid of getting fouled out, but at the same time, I think he also lacks the footwork to put him in those good positions. Because he doesn't have the natural footwork and the drop steps and the spins.
But he never had a Phil Jackson. You gotta take that into account too.
But Shaq already had that before Phil Jackson. So what Phil Jackson taught Shaq was actually when to make the right play. So Phil Jackson taught Shaq when to make the right pass and when to be dominant and when to do his post moves. But Shaq always had the post fundamentals, even when he was in Orlando as a rookie. And that's something that Wilt never really had. Shaq gets the ball in the post, his drop step, his spins, his little bunny hooks, and his drop steps going into the body, taking contact, forcing you to either foul him or he gets a dunk, or he gets a little hybrid hook shot. That's something that Wilt didn't really have. And that's why Shaq, his offense, you can actually run a championship level offense through him. But you can't really do it with Wilt. That was the biggest problem that's the biggest difference between these two guys. However, Wilt's a better defender, and he's a bit more athletic.
And better conditioning.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's why if you want to choose between these two, it's pretty tough. But I would say the accomplishments go to Shaq for the 4 championships, and the fact that he's proven he can be a defender.
I think Shaq, better postseason player. Wilt, a better regular season player.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because I think that one of the things that people have against Shaq is that they feel like in the regular season he didn't try that hard, and he only basically tried hard in the postseason.
Well, it's about winning the championship, right?
Yeah.
So you know what? If you're making the finals every year, you're gonna have to pace yourself.
Shaq only tried for 1 year, 2000. That was it.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to. But if you're gonna go into the finals every single year, during the regular season, you're gonna have to pace yourself a little bit, anyways. So that's normal. But what counts is the postseason, what you can do.
No, Shaq's great in the postseason. Yeah.
So his polish and his offense is just amazing in terms of his post work, his footwork, and like we mentioned about Phil Jackson, when Shaq finally joined up with Phil Jackson, what Shaq learned was really how to become a truly great player by putting everything together, becoming a much better passer out of the post. I think that's the biggest thing that he learned under Phil Jackson. Because prior to that, I don't think Shaq was really that great of a passer out of the post when he was in Orlando. But under Phil Jackson, he actually learned how to put everything. All right. So we're back to the top. We're talking about Shaq, right? So
it's a difficult decision between
it's tough
between Wilt and Shaq.
Yeah, because like I said, Wilt's the better defender and more athletic, better conditioning, took better care of his body, so had more longevity in terms of his athletic prime.
Yeah.
But Shaq, much more polished in the post. And Shaq, offensively, is legitimately a guy that you can run the offense through and win a championship. So through Shaq, you get a championship-level offense that you can run through the guy. You can't really do it with Wilt. So that's the difference between these two guys. But we're talking about the topic also about when Shaq actually played with Phil Jackson. I think the biggest thing that he learned under Phil Jackson is the passing.
Yeah.
He became a much better passer under Phil Jackson, especially a passer out of the post. You would notice that after he joined up with Phil Jackson, that Shaq, after he caught the ball in the post, the first thing he would look for most of the time is to look for the cutter or to look for the open man to pass the ball to, which was something that he didn't always do as well when he was in Orlando. But when he's playing under the triangle offense and Shaq was so dominant that once he catches the ball, the other team's defenders, most of them, would all be focusing and looking at Shaq. And because of that, a lot of his teammates can take that opportunity to make a quick cut or get to the open spot. And that's why Shaq, actually the first thing he does when he was playing for the Jackson was to look for the open man before he even makes his move in the post. And that instantly just changed everything.
Right.
And at the same time, under Phil Jackson, Shaq actually, I think, learned how to be even more dominant. How to use his physical skills and his fundamentals in the post to be even more dominant. And I think he actually learned that and also win the pass. And that's the stuff of Phil Jackson and that great Bulls coaching staff, that former Bulls coaching staff with Phil Jackson. That's the things that they actually gave Shaq. So I think Shaq was able to put everything together into one package better at the same time, more so than Wilt Chamberlain was. Because we mentioned about Wilt, how he had some crazy assist years and everything, but then sometimes he would be passing because he would fall in love with the assist stats so much that he would be chasing. Yeah. Exactly, he'd be chasing the assists all the time, and he would be passing the ball when he should be shooting. Yeah. Or if he's in love with something else, he'd be trying to do that, get that instead of whatever. But with Shaq, it was always about. But Shaq at his best under Phil Jackson during the championship years actually put everything together and just did the right thing. At one time, at one point to win the championships, and I think that's the big difference between the two of them.
Interesting.
Yeah. As for who's really better, you know what? Wilt never had the benefit of playing under Phil Jackson either. And
he didn't get a good coach until he went to the 76ers with Alex Hannum, and then with the Lakers under Bill Sharman.
Yeah.
But that's when he started going to the finals.
But we also have to recognize, though, Wilt also, even when he first went in the league, he never had those post fundamentals that Shaq had when Shaq first came into the league, too. Shaq came into the league fully polished, almost fully polished in the post already. Mm-hmm. Wilt actually never did throughout his whole career. Mm-hmm. And that just comes down to coaching and also different eras, maybe. So, yeah.
Here's another interesting topic. So, we went through a comparison of four great centers now. Mm-hmm. What about Wilt Chamberlain versus Moses Malone and David Robinson?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting one. Like we were talking, honestly, these three guys.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're talking about longevity, you have to give it to Wilt, right?
Yeah.
In terms of longevity, durability, in terms of being able to maintain his athletic prime. But David Robinson, like what we mentioned already previously, physically and defensively, he's like your Wilt. He's very similar. I mean, David Robinson, on top of that, Robinson was more skilled than Wilt was offensively. Because Robinson can shoot the free throws. He had a very good mid-range jump shot. He had a very good post game where he can take a turnaround jump shot in the post. And Robinson can actually get a shot off. Robinson can actually hook shot from the left and the right hand. So in the post, I've seen him take hook shots with the left, seen him take hook shots with the right. He can turn either way and still get a hook shot. So Robinson was so skilled, and he was an athletic freak like Wilt was. Great defender. There were stories saying that Robinson can actually do handstand position from underneath the basket and walk in a handstand position all the way to half court. As a 7'2", 7'3".
Yeah, he's like the evolutionary Wilt. Yeah.
But out of all of these three guys, if you were to take at the very best, that very best moment in the NBA, the best season, I might take Moses Malone.
Moses Malone, 83 Moses Malone, 1962 Wilt, 1994 David Robinson. Who are you picking?
I think I would take Moses.
Moses has the best prime out of those two.
In my opinion, yeah. Moses' prime isn't very long.
Yeah.
But I think Moses at his best, I think his prime was better than all three of those guys because, in my opinion, the reason is because, see, Moses is dominant in terms of scoring in the post. He can be a post anchor as well, like what I mentioned about guys like Shaq and everything else. He can be in the post and he can kill you in the post. Like the guy can literally kill you in the post. Like he would get the ball in the post, little drop step turnaround with the elbow, and bam, he's inside.
I think one problem with Moses is defensively, he's not up there with Wilt or Robinson.
I agree. But then, but at the same time, I think offensively, he's a better championship anchor, and also he's such a great rebounder.
Yeah, rebounder-wise, he's better. But I don't think about the other side of the game, the total package, right?
Yeah. Total package, yeah, sure. But I think Wilt doesn't have the. I think the total package, Wilt actually has he's not as polished offensively either with the footwork. So Wilt actually is a bit lacking in terms of the total package as well. David Robinson is probably the best total package out of all three of these guys because he's so polished offensively and he's such a great defender and he's athletic.
Yeah.
But the one thing is Moses has the it factor. He's got the it factor. And I think that's something that all three of these guys, only he has it. Because I don't think David Robinson, he's such a nice guy. He seems like such a great guy.
Right. Moses, he has that playoff factor.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Moses has the killer instinct.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Robinson and Wilt both lacked. I think both Robinson and Wilt didn't have that killer instinct.
That's the thing. Russell got it. Hakeem got it.
Yep.
Shaq got it in playoffs, right?
Yep. Yeah.
But Robinson and Wilt.
Exactly. I don't think they have that it factor, the killer instinct. But Moses at his best had that it factor as well. Yeah. And I think that's the reason why I take Moses at his best during those couple of seasons.
Okay.
Yeah. In my opinion. Yeah.
And do you rank? Where do you rank Russell? I forgot to ask her. Is Russell above or below Wilt?
That's a great conversation.
Because another thing you use the it factor. Russell has the it factor.
Yes.
But I feel like he's missing one side of his game though.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
So Russell has the it factor more so than Wilt.
Yeah.
He's a much more higher basketball IQ guy, and I would say Russell has more killer instinct than Wilt does, and he's more competitive. Also, I would say Russell, even though Wilt getting like high assists during certain years, but I think Russell is the natural higher IQ passer than Wilt is, because Russell passes at the right times. Defensively, they're both great, but Russell also has a better ability to run the fast break. So when Russell gets the basketball, he can either actually take the ball down himself and make a play. He makes a good decision of when to pass the ball, when to go in for a layup himself. That's something that Wilt doesn't really have, and that's the biggest thing. So through that, you can also kind of win a championship. It's kind of like
he's 10-0 in Game 7s, by the way.
Okay, well there you go, and that's the it factor we're talking about: the killer instinct and the clutchness. Offensively, I would say, in terms of just pure talent and physical ability, Wilt is better in that aspect. But in terms of just having your head on straight to play the right way, it seems like Russell actually has that more.
Russell has the intangibles.
Exactly,
Wilt has tangibles.
Exactly, he has more of that on point. So that's the difference between these two guys.
Cool.